Hi friends, this is Krish, the Urban Naxal. Friends, it is almost 13 days since my mother passed away. She passed away at 1 or so, 1 a.m. on the 1st of Jan 2023. That's a picture of my mom with my dad. And this picture was taken back in 2000, I think it was early 2017 or late 2016, when my dad was ill with cancer. And so this was a kind of a sentimental moment, and we took this picture. I want to talk a little about my mom. I'm not a sentimental person. I'm almost an unemotional person in many ways. I haven't cried since my mom died. I did not cry for several years even after my dad died. Is it that I have an emotional blockage? Maybe. I don't know. But in many ways, I am not an emotional person, and grief is not an emotional that I was feeling when my dad died, and grief is not an emotion that I'm feeling now since my mom died. It's just a reality. But I want to talk about my mom. And no, it's not because it's just the 13th day or almost the 13th day. We're not going to have any ceremonies. 13th day ceremony, definitely not. Maybe we get together in a few days for those who would like to remember her. My mom and I had a complicated relationship, to be honest. I am an only son, an only child. We were close, my mother and I were close. When I was a child, we were very close. She used to go out of her way to buy me toys. She was very generous. In some ways, she was more generous than my dad. In the sense that my dad might forbid her to spend too much money, but mom would say it is important for him to have this toy or this book and stuff like that. And she would go out of her way to get me, take me there, get me those comic books and things which I liked. She was a complicated person. My mom was a complicated person. I am a complicated person too. She was a complicated person. She had some amazing social skills, and she lacked some very ordinary social skills. She was not able to maintain a good relationship where if it's an ordinary relationship, so with her sisters-in-law, etc. In the early years of my dad's marriage with her, I think she made life quite miserable for him because she almost broke him from his family. My dad was a traditional guy. He was very attached to his brothers and sisters. I think mom sort of pulled him away. I don't know. Maybe it was she was feeling insecure. My mom was an orphan. And maybe she felt insecure that the only one person in her life who belongs to her has to be shared with others. Maybe that was the reason. My mom and dad were very close, very, very close. The photo that you're seeing behind me shows an exceptionally close romantic couple. My mom used to use the word romantic quite often, and somehow romantic was a really big thing for her. Being a romantic couple really mattered for her. She was a romantic. But she wasn't only that. She had some amazing social skills. And she had a a different view of life, a view that has influenced me very deeply. She believed that if you're living for money, just making money and just living, basically like doing a job and living, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's the use? There's a saying, she used to say this, it's a Kannada saying, she used to say it quite often to me. And the saying is, I'll say it in English. What she said was, living 1 year like a Nandi bull is better than living 100 years as a Handi. Handi means pig. So better 1 year lived like a bull than 100 years lived like a pig. So she believed that. She had great visions of heroism. She used to tell me stories of heroism, of valor, Jhansi Ki Rani type stories. She used to tell me about generals of the Indian army. I remember hearing from her about General Karyappa and General Timmayya, and these are basically Kurgi people, Kurg, the people of Kurg, which is a region of Karnataka, who were the generals of army back in those days. And she had visions, she had hopes that I would become an army general or I would become a great scientist. It mattered to her that I should become great. She wanted to be great too, but she kind of wanted me to be greatness. Great as in, Alexander the Great, or Buddha is a great man, or a heroic general, or an amazing scientist like, Madame Curie, Marie Curie, and her husband Pierre Curie. They were heroic people who, sort of dedicated their life to science. They discovered radioactivity, and they discovered many radioactive elements. And in the process, they died. They died of radiation sickness. That inspired her. So she was a kamikaze kind of a person. She was this fighter. She was a fighter. And she used to get into fights. And not all the fights were good fights. She used to quite often... Okay, so the good fights were... She really wanted to make a difference in the lives of people. She wanted to make a difference in the lives of the poor. And back then in 1970, I was born in 1965. So by 1968 or 69, we had settled in Ahmedabad. Mom, dad and I, we were in Ahmedabad. I went to school in Ahmedabad. I completed college in Ahmedabad from Mumbai. We had gone from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. And mom had adopted, she had gone there, and straight away in the year 1970 or 71, she went and adopted 2 villages. One is this village named Adalaj, where you have a large stepwell called Adalaj Wow in Gandhinagar district. And another is a village named Lakwad in Mehsana district. Why she adopted those 2 villages, I don't know. And it was audacious of her to adopt these villages. Audacious because my dad was a journalist, not very high-ranking journalist. He was a sub-editor. When we moved to Ahmedabad, he was a sub-editor. He worked for a paper called Western Times, and I think one more, some Gujarat, not Gujarat Samachar, some other Samachar, some such. He worked for a couple of papers. And then he joined Times of India. He wasn't a very big guy back then, of course. He retired as news editor of Economic Times in Mumbai, which is a significant post. It's not an editor. It is about 2-3 levels below editor. But still, it's a good post. It's a significant post as a journalist. Mom adopted these villages back then and started working very hard for the upliftment of the poor, the Harijans, the downtrodden lower caste people who are nowadays called SC/ST, but back then used to be referred to by the name that Gandhiji gave, Harijans. She started working for the upliftment of Harijans. Now, what is upliftment? Upliftment means she tried to get them employment. How? So in those days, khadi was a big deal. Khadi was really quite a big deal, and Khadi Gram Udyog used to be a thing back then. It was a major employment provider. Spinning and weaving, handlooms. Power looms had not yet come in, so handlooms. So mom brought what are called Ambar Charkha centers to these villages of Adalaj and Lakwad. She brought in the sense she used to petition the government, Gujarat government. She would go to Gujarat government and tell them, you give me a Ambar Charkha center here in this place. Set up an Ambar Charkha center so that they will find employment. Now, people who worked in these Ambar Charkha centers were usually the lower caste people called Vanakars or Bunkars. Bunkars are weavers. The weavers are considered scheduled caste. So weavers, carpenters, sutars, lohars, they are all different castes. They are not just occupations, they are castes. My mom and I, we used to go, and quite often we have spent, I remember spending at least 3-4 nights in the houses of the poor, in the huts, sleeping on their khatiyas, on rope beds, I remember the smells of those places. I remember the feel of those places. I have early childhood memories of those places. I have memories of their associations, and some people are still alive. People who I used to see back then. A gentleman named Hirabhai from Mehsana is still there. He's aged, but kind of he has not changed. He's one of those people who don't age. It's quite amazing that he still has the same face. So there were these people, Hirabai, Khimabai. She got some of these guys jobs in Gandhinagar. They started working in Sachivalay in Gandhinagar as peon. I remember going out with some of these guys, a chap called Kanu, young fellow. Back then he was a peon. I still remember him, and he used to take me around. So, spent a lot of time in their company. Mom used to work among these people mainly. And whenever there was an incident of violence against them by upper caste people, why would this incident of violence happen? It would happen because, for example, they tried to drink from a well. They tried to draw water from the well. They were not supposed to draw water from the village well. They were only supposed to take the water given to them, poured into their pot by someone else. Or they have their own separate well, but they are not supposed to draw water from the village well. So if someone tried to draw water from the village well, or if one of these Harijans tried to go to a temple, and he would get beaten up. So there used to be these incidents of violence, caste-based violence, where they get beaten up. Sometimes murders happen, rape, murder, all these things used to happen because of such caste-based reasons. वो इधर क्यों आया? उसने मेरा glass को क्यों छुआ? Why did he draw water from the well? Why did he go to the temple? Why did he cast his shadow upon me? This kind of silly reasons used to end up with violence against them, and police often used to look the other way. Police didn't interfere. Mom used to take up these issues, go to Raj Bhavan, governor's office. She used to be very friendly, very familiar with the governor back then. There was a gentleman called Sriman Narayan. She used to be very friendly with. There was later another. There was the advisor to governor. There was a gentleman named H.C. Sarin. There was another gentleman afterwards called Satarawala. Around that time, H.C. Sarin and Satarawala, who were both advisors to the governor of the time. I forget the name of the governor, K.R. Narayanan. I don't remember. Anyway, no, not K.R. Whatever his name was. Then they used to be on very friendly terms. Not necessarily friendly. They used to argue with chief ministers in Gujarat. Madhavsi Solanki was sort of a household name around our house. Amarsi Chaudhary, I have eaten in his house, in Amarsi Chaudhary's house when I was a kid. Just mom, me and Amarsi Chaudhary. We had a dinner. There were some big people. Sanat Mehta, he was a minister. So we used to go there. We used to go to their houses, and there were social workers, and there was a gentleman named Prabhudas Patwari. We went to his house so many times. Now he later on became the governor of Tamil Nadu. So we used to, in short, that was my childhood. That was the kind of thing mom did. She was, and dad also, but mom was the leading person in this. Dad used to give the intellectual support because mom was not very good at writing. Dad used to draft her letters, about violence to these Harijans and all these things. Dad used to draft the letters and he used to type it out on his little brother typewriter at home, and then they used to submit the letters. Mom used to want to find out where the illicit liquor was being made in Ahmedabad, in an area called Chhara Nagar. Chharas are a tribe. They are called denotified tribes. Back then they were called ex-criminal tribes because the British used to consider themselves criminal or reformed criminals, and the entire tribe was criminal. That's how they used to consider them. And it was considered that these tribes, they were specialists in theft or robbery or illicit bootleg liquor. Bootleg liquor was a fact. Gujarat was a prohibition state, still is, and bootleg liquor used to be made and people used to drink it, and quite often they would go blind because the wrong sort of alcohol. I think ethyl alcohol is the methyl alcohol is the poisonous one. Ethyl alcohol is the okay one. So there used to be presence of methyl alcohol, and that would cause cell death in the brain and blindness blindness and paralysis and lots of things. So mom and dad used to go and investigate, and dad would write investigative articles in Times of India. So they used to do a lot of this work, and mom kind of pulled dad into social work. But mom was a social worker before she met dad. Let me tell you this. She used to run a school for slum kids in Worli. I think the name of there's a place called Love Grove. Somewhere in that region was a slum. Mom and dad, when they met, my mom was already running a school. Now remember, my mom was an orphan. She was living in the garage quite often of her uncle who had brought her up. Story is a little complicated. Uncle is not a direct uncle. He is a Malayali gentleman. Later on, my dad, who was a journalist around 29-30 at that time, working in Financial Express, and he was working in Financial Express at the time. He put my mom into a hostel called Regina Patches. He was paying her hostel fees before they got married. And they got married in 1965, and I was born in 1965, shortly after they got married. Not even 9 months, for that matter. They loved each other. They absolutely loved each other. They were made for each other. My dad was a very gentle guy. with her especially, he was a very gentle guy. And please believe me, it was not easy being gentle with my mom. It's not easy. She could really try your patience. She had a very strong personality, and dad was he was gentle, he was strong, but in many ways I felt he did not stand up to her. But then, it's not my place to judge him. It's not my place to judge him. I guess he did the best he could. Their relationship, they two were the relationship, and I was also like a satellite around them. It was not we three, it was they two. I'm not saying this with bitterness or anger, but it was they two, and then I was there. Now dad tried to not make that happen, so dad was especially close to me. Mom and I used to be very close also, where in some ways we shared even more than dad and me. Dad and I had intellectual conversations, but when it came to attitudes, I have taken a lot of my attitudes from mom. Dad was not the kind of guy who would have court cases against him. Dad was not the kind of guy who would step into risk. He was kind of conservative. He was a conservative guy. He was intellectual, but he would not have taken the kind of risks that I like to take. Mom was that kind of person. She used to go to this place, Charanagar. As I said, denotified tribe, excommunicated, ex-criminal tribe. And where bootlegging was done, and they were genuinely, if not dangerous people, she was not an unattractive woman. And I remember times when 11 and 12 in the night and we are waiting for a call. Those were the times when we only had a landline, and then mom calls at 11 or 12 in the night and saying, I am with the Chara leaders because there were police raids over here. The Bachchu Jeta and Jalam Paru they were arrested, or they were about to be arrested, or something like that, So these are the leaders, and I am in their family, in their house, and I am coming in half an hour. At bloody 11 or 12 in the night. So mom used to take these huge risks. Dad was like, what are you doing being out there? You're a woman. Mom never. So mom was very tough. She would go in the back, aftermath of Bhopal gas tragedy, mom lands up in Bhopal and tries to do something. Aftermath of anti-Sikh riots 1984, mom lands up in Delhi, tries to do something. Whether she succeeded or not, I don't know. But there was a lot she did. I'm Krish, the Urban Naxal. Jai Maharashtra. Jai Hind.